enough for the 3 points. Manchester City are still alive here. Balotelli, Aguero!
What's up, football fans? It's another episode of The Football Therapist. I'm your host, Rami Mghani. It's our 10th episode, guys.
The Big 10.
The Big 10. It happened so fast. I'm so happy about this. Really glad that we managed to get this far and hopefully to keep it continuing. Thank you all for all the support. Haytham and Yahya are here, and we've got an interesting topic to discuss today. But first, we're going to just jump into the leagues. First of all, how are you guys doing today? You all right?
I'm doing all right. We just won the Supercoppa after losing to Inter. So I'm feeling good, man. We had a road bump in the league. We're in a must-win game. We lost it. Congratulations, Inter. Yeah, I know. Congratulations, Inter fans. Going pessimistic into the Napoli game, but Andrea Pirlo won 1 out of 4 trophies so far. He's gonna win the next 3.
You're talking to a Real Madrid and Liverpool fan. Let's not. So we don't want to talk about cup competitions because we're still raw about it right now. Yeah, we'll touch up on that. But so before we jump into our interesting topic of the day, as usual, we're gonna just give you guys a quick roundup of what's been happening in the leagues. So right now in La Liga, Atletico are leading Real Madrid by 7 points, and they have a game in hand. Barca are 3 points behind Real Madrid. So shaping up, not in the way I like to see, but it is what it is.
Did you see yesterday how Madrid brought out an Comunicado Oficial Zidane?
Yeah, freaked me out.
I saw that. I was like, oh crap, they fired him.
Turns out he has COVID.
It turns out he has COVID. And then everybody's like, oh, thank God he has COVID, like a disease that is...
You know why I'm happy about that? Because so many people were big talkers come out, oh, that's it, he's done, he should go. They really panicked when they saw that. So when the reality hit them, they realized, no, they don't want, a lot of them realized that they don't want him to go. There's still people who are thinking maybe he should, but the people who are big mouth talkers got that sort of punch in the face when they saw the Comunicado Oficial Zidane, and they're like, oh no. And then it was, Zinedine Zidane has COVID-19. It's like, oh, phew, okay.
Yeah,
our best wishes to Zizou.
The worst part is when I open the website, it's obviously in Spanish, and I'm like, okay, what does this mean? Is he fired or is he not?
That's it, reading through the Spanish websites, I've actually started to be able to pick up. I mean, I know basic Spanish, but reading those pages actually helps me to start to understand the football lingo at least.
Well, what Spanish phrase have you learned so far?
Quieres ganar muchos títulos.
Welcome, guys, to the Spanish Therapist.
Delantero is striker, if I'm not mistaken.
And even you do it with Italian as well.
I know the Italian football terms like calcio d'angolo, calcio di punizione, and all that stuff.
Yeah, so you're lucky that you're lucky yours is in English. So.
Yeah, I'm reminded of Brad Pitt. What was it? Buen venero, or whatever the hell he said.
Yeah, so cool. Where were we? EPL. Man United have jumped into the lead. I think you were just trying to derail from this. Man United have jumped into the lead. City trailed them by 2 games with a game in hand, so they have a chance to go top. And they're tied with Leicester right now. So Liverpool have dropped to 4th, and they're trailing Leicester by 4 points. And they could drop even further if Spurs and Everton win their games in hand. So, just that, talking about what's happening with Real, what's happening with Man U, even in Serie A, AC Milan 3 points clear of Inter, Napoli trailed by 6, but Juve are in 6th. They could climb to 3rd if they beat Bologna tomorrow, but
they'll be first by May. Don't worry.
But then they're still 7 points off the top. So all of our teams are actually in
after you pay off the officials.
I think it's going to be a tight race. Honestly speaking, jokes aside, it's not going to be easy. AC Milan are still looking good after the break, so definitely can't write them off. I guess I'm kind of wrong about Napoli. They're on and off. One game they play like champs, and in another game they just kind of don't show up in the way that they should. But I think definitely Inter and AC Milan are gonna occupy one of those top 2 spots come May, unless a miracle happens at Juve and we go on a winning streak. But I don't know. Yeah, anything's possible at this point.
Or if, the others obviously drop points, which, it's been very prominent, such a scenario in all the leagues this year.
Where EPL as well.
And the only team not dropping points are Atletico, and it's pissing me off. They just are not dropping points.
Do they have injuries or anything?
They're good.
Yeah, probably why.
And right now, I think Barcelona are probably kicking themselves about Suarez. He's having
Having a great season so far.
They made no money off of him, and he's having a great season.
Yeah, but they actually got rid of him for the payroll, so it makes sense. That's why Messi is also going to be on the way out.
Yeah, true.
Good times ahead.
Yeah, good times ahead for Barcelona, not necessarily for Messi. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, if we go back to the EPL, I've been saying it's cities to win.
Yeah.
And several times, if you remember, I always used to say it's incredible we're in a position to challenge, given we basically have no defense, and that we're just getting screwed now. And it's like if people look at the statistics, Liverpool didn't score in like 4 games.
Yeah.
And they say, well, they have the entire front free available. But the problem is when you have Joe Gomez and Virgil van Dijk, which, and I've said it before, Matip I think he's a better defender than Gomez, but Gomez is better for the system just because they both play so high up, which Villa, if you remember, completely took advantage of that.
Yeah.
It completely condenses the field, which then allows the balls to be the midfield to push up, forward to push up, and that's how usually Liverpool wins the second ball, very high up the pitch, and then play the counter attack, and that's where Mane and Salah come in. Now they're forced to play with their backs to the goal, and it's just not clicking. And we turned into a crossing team just because we don't have that quick transition anymore.
Now Thiago's back and healthy, so he should be able to sort of neutralize maybe that.
But the thing is, we don't have, let's say, a Lewandowski who can be, he can play literally, he can play as a target man, he can play as, the last defender, he can play as a poacher, he can play as a playmaker. Firmino is as good as he is, he needs space. But if the other team is already dropped back completely, like playing, 2 low blocks of, let's say, 5-5, so you have the entire team basically defend, or 5-4 or whatever. What is Firmino going to do? There's no space for him to exploit.
Yeah, and teams have caught on to that. And that's the same thing with Real Madrid. Teams have caught on that playing a low block, 2 low blocks actually, completely derails their system, just like Liverpool, and we don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah,
And even Klopp came out and said, I want a central defender.
Yeah, so here's the thing. This is, because of COVID and everything, and, the income coming down, the fact is Liverpool cannot afford to buy a centre back.
Yeah.
Which is why when they did the Jota and Thiago deals, it was, we're going to pay 5 million up front.
Yeah.
Just because we cannot afford it because of COVID. So that's another thing. We do need a centre back, but this is going to stay the same. Definitely out of the race. So I think it is City's to win. My money's on City because they don't have a lot of injuries. They're starting to click again. I don't think it's sustainable for United, especially once Europa League comes into play again. So yeah, I mean, I still think it's City's to win.
I think you're on the point there.
Yeah.
Cool.
And they just beat Aston Villa 2-0. Yeah.
That's your second team, right?
Yeah.
So you always pick losers.
Yeah. Ouch.
Wow.
No, you're on fire today,
moving
bro.
on to the Bundesliga.
On a neutral note, right?
This is like my third cup of coffee, so I'm just a bit awake.
Wow.
Okay, yeah.
Wired. So yeah, Bundesliga, Bayern are leading Leipzig by 4, so Leipzig couldn't capitalize on those games in hands that they had. In the Liga, Lyon have dropped consecutive points, and PSG under Mauricio Pochettino retaking the lead.
Yeah.
They're tied with Lille actually, but they're I think on goal
They
difference.
beat Montpellier in the last game.
Yeah, and 2 points ahead of Lyon.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening.
So we know PSG is going to win the French league, right?
Well, I think so. They are getting challenged more this year than previous years for some weird reason, but I think now they're gonna.
If you were forced to pick a team to support, who would you support?
In the French league.
Yeah.
I have no connection and like emotional. Connection
Yeah, I mean,
to the
but if
French
you
league.
had to pick one.
I have
Just
one, by the way. but-
My childhood says Marseille.
No, your childhood says PSG. You support Lakers, you support Madrid. You should also support PSG.
Should we give him some water?
Yeah, he's in the mood for personal attacks today. Listen, bro. Here's a glass of water.
He's had
Chill
too
pill
much
in there.
coffee. Yeah. So another thing, by the way, what's
Girondin de Bordeaux for me. I always kind of like
Bordeaux.
them.
I'd go for Lyon and Bordeaux just because I heard the cities are nice, or like the towns.
Well,
are
yeah, the
nice.
towns are actually nice. But
Yeah.
like, I watched their UEFA Cup run when Zinedine Zidane was actually with them at the time, and they had Christophe Dugarry. They had they had a lot of good players back then, and yeah, they ended up winning the league in like 1999.
For me,
after
Marseille
that,
is
or
just, when I was younger, there's a lot of like prominent Ghanaian players who have come through it. So Abedi Pele used to
true,
play with
yeah.
them, and his sons
Ayew,
more recently. Yeah, Ayew,
Marseille is
Andre.
also a nice place to go to.
Is it?
So yeah, a nice choice. I'm picking based on location, so.
So one thing, by the way, what's up with all the cup upsets? So if you look at it now, basically in general, Real and Atletico have both crashed out before the round of 16 in the Copa del Rey to third tier.
Juventus qualified
Juventus qualified.
in extra time.
But yeah, so Real Atletico out of the Copa del Rey.
Yeah, all of the big teams are
Atletico-
knocking out.
Yeah, Athletic Bilbao, okay, this wasn't to a third tier team, but Bilbao won the Super Cup over Barcelona. Bayern are out of the DFB Pokal Cup. They lost to a second tier team called Holstein Kiel. Liverpool have been out of the Carabao Cup since October. And more recently, Leeds are out of the FA Cup, and they just got destroyed 3-0 by a fourth tier team called Crawley Town. So the cup competitions are throwing up like
Giant killers.
upsets everywhere.
Upsets,
Yeah. I don't know what's going on. It's interesting though. It'll be nice to see different teams win anyways. So
I think it's probably an indication of the big clubs kind of deprioritizing it a little bit and saving up some energy and throwing in some obviously opportunities for players that are not starters.
Yeah.
I mean, Juventus treated their cup game with Genoa in the same way, and it was actually an under-23 player of Tunisian origins that actually, his name is Hamza, who scored the winning goal in extra time. So that was interesting.
I can speak about Real Madrid, and yeah,
He's actually from the Lyon.
Real
Oh yeah,
didn't
my
look
favorite
like,
French team.
Yeah, right. Speaking of favorite French teams,
Real didn't look like not that they weren't taking it, excuse me, not that they weren't taking it seriously.
Yeah.
It's just that they're a third tier team, so it was a chance to give the big players some rest, to give the younger players a bit more minutes.
yeah.
But the two low blocks, like we were talking about, they just turn on, and obviously, like definitely it's no excuse, like for Real Madrid to lose to a third tier team.
Yeah,
Like,
I saw the winning goal. I mean, the winning goal was quite laughable. The way that
yeah, and Vinicius is never going to hear. He was already a little bit under a bit of pressure, and I think the way he tuned out on that goal, even though like footage later on shows Marcelo telling him, mark him, don't mess this up. He said like in Portuguese, do not mess this up. And he just switched off.
Yeah.
And he let the guy through, and the guy scored. So
How much of it do you think is the fact that there are no fans? So, and the whole routine of COVID, where they're still isolating, getting tested, blah blah blah. How much do you think it's affecting their motivation?
I think it is, because they've even come out and said it.
Yeah.
They've said that when you're in the Bernabeu with 80,000 people egging you on, you wake up a bit. But when you're in an empty, echoing stadium, it's easier to switch off. You know what I mean? But for me, I mean, what do I know? I'm not a professional football player, but I'm just a fan. But for me, it's like, you're a professional. You should know how to work through that.
Are Madrid still playing in the training ground?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that
The
definitely also
Bernabeu
affects.
is under construction, anyways.
Yeah, but that definitely affects it. I mean, just the fact that you're not going.
But they went on a run of wins in that. They know how to win on that pitch. It's not that they don't know how to win on that pitch. It's just the last couple of games, it's just been laughable, to be honest. I have to say it.
I mean, there's no break.
Yeah.
There just needs to be a proper break, probably.
And I mean, like now it's like moves have been done. Jovic has went back to Frankfurt, scored a brace on.
Oh yeah,
his
that's
first
hilarious.
game
So
back.
I saw the memes. It's like 40 whatever games for Madrid, 2 goals, 45 minutes for.
for Frankfurt.
Eintracht Frankfurt.
Yeah, so now there's talk about Odegaard. Also, there's all this discussion: is Zidane not giving them the right chances? Is he trying to stick to like that? But I have to feel for Zidane, because when he plays them and they don't perform, people say, "Oh, he's playing the young players. He should stick to a starting 11." Then he stuck to a starting 11. They stuck. Oh, he's not playing the young players. It's just
You can't win.
I feel for him.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, honestly, it's gonna be interesting because Zidane never really built a team. right? He inherited an incredible group of players, and he was able to get them click when they weren't clicking.
Yeah.
So I guess now is the chance to see. So we know Zidane can win if he has a good group of players.
Yeah.
Now I guess now we're gonna see if he can actually rebuild and make a team of his own, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he kind of has his core. He just needs to add the elements, you know? And that core is getting older.
Yeah,
So-
exactly. So that's why he needs to
Yeah.
rebuild.
So yeah. And I think him, you know, trying out Schust, who's a center back from the Castilla team, was also a bit of a, you know, just a play for him to see. Let me see how this kid performs.
Plays
because
defense?
What if I...
Plays defense.
Yeah.
How
CB.
much? How much?
What do you mean how much?
How much to get him?
he didn't do bad, actually. He was quite good. But honestly, I think he's on level with your young guys.
Man,
with
our young guys aren't even there right now.
So it's not like he wouldn't add value.
You're just trying to keep him.
No, I think Alaba coming is going to be...
Is
the
that
first
official
step.
now?
It seems likely.
Ah, okay.
It seems likely. It's not official, but it seems likely. His dad came out and said, no, we don't have an agreement with Real Madrid yet, but there's no smoke without fire, so I think it will happen.
Fair enough. I mean, Klopp used to play centre back, so...
So he knows what he needs to do.
What?
Cool. So yeah, that's a bit of it about the roundup of the leagues and the cups. So something's been happening, gaining a bit of traction this week, and I wanted to spend, you know, maybe the rest of the episode talking about it. And it's the whole debacle about this European Super League. You guys heard about that?
Yep.
So just a little bit of background is just that basically since the early 90s, there's been this concept of a league consisting of the top European clubs. Standalone league, you know, and it's gained a lot of traction over the years from then until now. You've had Florentino Perez, Real Madrid president, supporting the idea heavily. Arsene Wenger and Clarence Seedorf over times have backed it. Before Barcelona fired their president, they were also showing interest. So it's something that's been discussed quite a bit over the years, but never really officially taken.
In the mid-late 90s, when I used to collect World Soccer magazine, I remember...
World Soccer magazine. I used to collect it too.
Exactly. I remember there was an actual advertisement of a Super League going on, even involving Boca Juniors and teams from South America, Corinthians, and when Corinthians were big side back in the 90s, River Plate as well. So, and of course the Real Madrids and Barcelonas and big European sides. And I think it almost got green lighted back then, and then it just got scrapped. So I mean, this is something that has been like sort of a football dream by the
For
big clubs.
some clubs.
For some
That's
clubs,
the
yeah, exactly. For the big successful clubs. It's nice. I mean, yeah, I remember the advertisement saying, imagine what mouth-watering tie every week in and week out between Boca Juniors and Real Madrid or Ajax and Corinthians. I don't know, you know, things like that. So, but like, we get that in the Champions League, I mean, as far as European football is concerned.
But that's the
And
argument.
I have another comment after you continue the intro. I want to talk about.
No, that's actually a good segue because that's the argument about whether it is a positive or a negative for the clubs, whether it's a positive or negative for the fans, etc. So basically, you know, this thing has been discussed throughout the years.
Yeah.
Fast forward to like 3 days ago, and the wires go into overdrive because apparently there was a 3-hour meeting between Florentino Perez and Juve president Andrea Agnelli. 3 hours discussing the Super League. Two clubs with a lot of power, with a lot of influence, discussing it, made it seem like this might actually be happening. It might happen. And wires went into overdrive because this is, you know, some people have their qualms about it and some people support it. The claim is just basically that it's going to be a competition that's going to be limited to big clubs. So it's going to be 15 founding members, which are suspected to be England's big six. 3 clubs from Spain, so Real, Barcelona, and probably Atletico. 3 from Italy, Juve, Inter, and Milan. 2 from Germany, probably Bayern and Borussia, and 1 from France, which is probably PSG. So those are 15 founding teams who will play every single competition. And there's 5 teams who will qualify every year, annually. The revenues behind it are massive. They're going to be giving infrastructure grants to the teams to build their stadiums for quote unquote lost stadium related revenues due to COVID-19. So from a business standpoint, thinking about TV sponsorships and whatnot, it's massive for these big teams because they get to like recoup a lot of their losses. From a business standpoint, they get to make revenues that they're probably been losing year on year over the last 2 decades, I would say. And they also get merit money, kind of like the EPL. And the idea is that 12 clubs from this would qualify to the FIFA Club World Cup in the new format. And there's going to be financial fair play monitoring on it as well. So this was now sort of what was kind of proposed, and the backlash came from all over. First of all, lots of authorities saw it as a threat to European football. FIFA and UEFA have already come out and said, we don't support it. Any player who takes part in this league is banned from FIFA and UEFA competitions. So World Cup, Euro, etc.
Why are they threatening with something that the clubs would love to happen?
Not because not all the clubs would love to happen. And
No, of course all the clubs would love to happen. How many times do coaches come out and say internationals are a waste of time, players go get injured, how much the fans hate it?
This brings up the whole international versus club.
Exactly.
So it's going to affect the international element, but also for FIFA and UEFA as corporations, something like the UCL is like their bread and butter, and the Europa League is also something that's important to them, and they get to have this exposure going to all that. So the second point about who gets affected is smaller clubs, smaller European clubs who rely on that one, airing of them against Real Madrid per year, where they get, a couple 100,000 out of it. That's huge for them. They don't get, if this competition comes into play, they don't have that access. It's only about the big clubs.
No, but I don't buy that argument because, what are the chances of how many small clubs are there in Spain? Let's assume 90.
Yeah.
How many of these 90 are going to play against Madrid, considering there's another 20 teams or something in the Premier Division of the Spanish League?
They wouldn't, but the competition also gets funded. So there's multiple avenues. There's competition gets funded for participants, and if they go through, they get paid money. If they play against a big team that has high TV viewership, they get money. If they get some kind of sponsorship deal, they get money.
Exactly, but it's all luck. I mean, the problem is that in that argument in particular is that you are telling the small teams you need to count on luck to basically get money to make you sustainable or to stay adrift, stay in business. And, this brings us back to when there was that suggestion going around between Liverpool and United for revamping the EPL and having the voting power. One of the core things that made the championship chairman agree to it was the fact that there is guaranteed money coming out of the Premier League to all of the small clubs. So the small clubs don't have to count on the big clubs or, these, let's call it handouts, in order to be sustainable and stay, financially healthy.
Look, for the Premier League, that is true. And
no,
the
but
Premier League is a bit of an exception.
But my point in this, the fact that this is an argument points to points towards the idea that essentially the current structure of the leagues, I'm not agreeing with the Super League, but the current structure needs to change, both for the benefit of both of the big teams and for the smaller teams.
True. That's a parallel argument. The idea here is just that the creation of this league, disbanding these teams participating in competitions like the UCL and the Europa League, where other smaller clubs also have an opportunity to get themselves out, is detrimental to those smaller clubs regardless, because EPL is different, because even the small, quote unquote, smaller clubs in EPL are relatively funded, they're privately owned, they own the stadiums. So we were talking to some of our friends, and there was this big topic about, okay, in Italy, there's so much politics involved. Clubs don't own the stadiums, they rent them from the government. Every time they try to do something that's a revenue driver, the government blocks it because it's not to their benefit. So we actually put this out on the Facebook page, and we got a couple of comments about the Super League, and I'm going to read one of them out. It's from this is from one of our listeners, Abed Zaidan, who is in Canada. He's a Juve fan, and he says, "The football purist in me wants to see the old traditions kept intact, but the realist in me recognizes that Juventus has peaked its earnings potential in the Italian league. I've seen very little evidence that there are any plans to grow and modernize the league in Italy. And I'm worried that if we remain with the status quo, within 5 to 10 years, we will no longer be able to compete financially, even with the smallest EPL clubs, let alone the sugar daddy clubs. So thank you, Abid, for sending that in. It's a fair point. So in the EPL, what I say, you have a bit more funding. In the Italy, for example, these things might actually come into play. It's not directly linked to the Super League, but the implementation of the Super League has some repercussions on some clubs or some leagues differently than others. And even with some fans, they don't want to see it go. They're like, this is a tradition. This is, what we are used to seeing. But someone like Abid is saying, I'm a football purist and I want to see the old traditions kept intact. But maybe the reality of our world is that we may have to adopt something like this for the clubs to think 5-10 years ahead. Otherwise, these big clubs are also going to, we know that none of them are as financially stable as they were 10 years ago. It's just going to get worse. So maybe something like this.
Look, honestly, in my own opinion, it starts with all of the FAs, UEFA and FIFA. They all basically have different agendas and they all work for their own benefit. They don't work for the benefit of the clubs.
Right.
None of them do. I hate to say it, but for example, when you look at NBA, for example, the central governance of the NBA is there for the benefit of the clubs.
Right.
Yeah.
If the FA or whatever the rule, basically the ruling football bodies or associations were there for the benefit of the clubs, you wouldn't have ridiculous like, oh, there's 2 weeks free here. We're gonna cram in 4 internationals and make a ton of money out of it.
I'll just click the
bleep that one out. Yeah.
So essentially, my
tag.
point is that you have UEFA, you have FIFA, you have whatever FA, even the Premier League has a different body. All of them has their own agenda and all of them are in it for profit. None of them are in it for the clubs. So I'm not surprised this is coming out. Obviously, you have the big clubs who have a lot of negotiating power. They're looking out, you know what? You guys are all looking out for yourselves. I'm going to look out for myself. Regardless, whoever wins, if it's, the Super League is made, if it stays the same, if you have the FIFA getting their way, UEFA getting their way, at the end of the day, the small guys are going to be screwed out, regardless of what happens. And that is just because the people in power do not care. The only time I saw somebody in power that actually cared a little bit was actually the championship chairman when he agreed to that deal. And that's because he saw the benefit to his teams. And the deal that they now have with the championship doesn't even come close to what the Premier League was or what those Liverpool and United were even proposing back then. So it comes back to it's handouts from the big teams to the small teams.
Yeah.
So what are UEFA doing? All they're doing, oh, okay, you're banned from our competitions. That's a good thing.
But a good thing to who? That's the thing.
To all of the clubs.
Not to the smaller clubs.
The smaller clubs will be lucky if they get somebody in one of the big national teams.
Okay, so they're already in the shit, but this is like the one silver lining they had, and they're getting that taken away from them. Don't you see it that way as well? Somehow? I mean, look at someone
that's
like...
my point.
Or for example,
that's my point. You can make the same argument for anything.
So are we accepting the fate of small clubs as remaining as small clubs forever ad infinitum, and they will never have a chance to compete with the big boys? This is what I have a
Here's
problem
my
with.
point.
I love the Leicester story, for example. I like the Parma story of the 1990s.
Here's the thing. Ignore Parma because
that's
that's ages ago. Leicester, they had a billionaire backing them. Leeds, who are
that's
playing
true.
amazingly, they got a ton of money behind them. Newcastle is going to be emerging. They have a ton of money behind them. The only way for a small club to become, a big club now is to get money behind them. The only team that had a chance, which was, like Burnley, for example, where are they now? They're stuck in, lower table, and they might even get relegated.
But look,
why they don't have the money behind
But
them?
to Haytham's point, though, Leicester, fine, they were backed by a billionaire, they had a lot of money, but they didn't go and do any marquee signs. They didn't sign superstars to the team.
No, I agree.
And they still managed to
I
do it.
agree. They basically did it the right way. They got the right players in. They did everything right. But they had a billionaire backing them. That comes with a lot of resources.
Yeah. Oh.
That's my point. So why do you have to depend on, let's say, somebody to come out if you really care about your clubs and your association and so on? Why does it have to come to, let's say, a breaking point before, the FA takes some action?
Yeah.
Why don't you start putting it, for example, one of the best things that happened in football, which is getting screwed up right now, was financial fair play rules. As much as people criticize it and say, oh, it's just to keep the big clubs there, blah, blah, whatever. No, it's also keeping everybody financially safe. Since the financial rules came into place in all of the big leagues, how many clubs did we hear about going into administration?
Yeah.
Just because it is there.
I mean, like a story like Wiggins.
But the
is
financial
a
fair
sad
play
story.
doesn't apply to them. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So
It doesn't
that proves
apply
my
to
point. It doesn't apply to them because they're not in the Premier League.
I don't know if I should say
But at the
Glasgow Rangers in 2012, but
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time,
They got penalized.
Yeah, they got liquidated.
Why I bring up Wigan is just that the idea of clubs with history, 100-something-year-old clubs,
Yeah.
falling victims to the situation.
Exactly.
Which is sad.
Why aren't they going in, enforcing some sort of structure, giving them tools to be successful? Why is it like the Wild West out there?
Yeah, I mean, you can say why, but the fact is, so like, you can attest to this. In Italy, it's not as structured as the APL, where you could get something like this. In Italy, it's like dog eat dog. It's the government, it's politics, it's right.
Yeah, I mean, so in Italy you have basically Juventus, Inter, Milan, AS Roma to a certain extent, Fiorentina. Those clubs are kind of like the attractive clubs for supporters to cheer on, and to the clubs that they want to watch and that sign the potential players, let's say, before they go on to become superstars in, I don't know, in the EPL or in Real Madrid or Barcelona. But I have a problem with this Super League thing, excuse me, because it will just kill that thing for the Italian league, let's say. I mean, who's gonna watch Serie A now when Juventus and Inter and Milan leave Serie A, let's say, to play in a Super League? But then again, just counter-arguing myself, who's watching Serie A right now? I don't know. Does it have a high view? Yeah, I see. Yeah, you're laughing. Yeah, I mean, it's true. Maybe that question could have been asked several years ago. I think it has gained a better viewership in the last couple of years or so, especially with Cristiano Ronaldo effect. Cough, cough. But like, yeah, I agree with Aboudi's statement. Sorry, Abed. Zaidan's statement earlier, when he said, the football purist in me basically disagrees with that thing.
I think there's no right or wrong about this. They're not right or wrong, but there's
so the
no
point that I wanted to
assessment.
mention earlier when you were making the intro was that, and you mentioned the Club World Cup. So speaking of the Club World Cup, like, why can't that be a sort of compromise, or why can't that be taken into consideration? Have a proper Club World Cup. Okay, fine. We have like Guadalajara playing against Al Hilal or
Because
Yokohama or something like that.
The winner gets what, like 1 million, 2 million?
Yeah.
Although I think there are talks to expand it to like a 24.
It will
or
be
36
expanded,
team
but still,
competition.
the money isn't there.
Well, it might get, if it's
And
going to expand, it's probably going to get funded.
Are they going to do it in the summer, or is it going to be in the middle of winter?
Is it going to be every 4 years, or is it going to be every year?
I think every 4 years. But I mean, look, for me.
But then again, sorry to interrupt. Like, it begs the question: Do we really need it? Like,
No.
does football really need a Super League?
So,
does it really need a
I mean-
24-team Club World Cup? Does it really need all of it? Like, this is.
If
Maybe
it's
I'm
not-
just too traditionalist and simplistic.
You're
about
like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah,
It's not
exactly.
working.
If it
But
ain't
that's the
broke,
thing,
don't
it
fix
is broke. That's my point.
So there are aspects. Okay,
It's that,
so
but fans are enjoying the setup, aren't they?
But
So
here's the thing.
putting Super League discussion aside, how do we level the playing field for the Parmas and Sassuolos
So,
and
first thing-
Fiorentinas and Genoas and Sampdorias? How?
Very quickly.
And
very,
Udineses.
Very quickly.
For example, on Twitter the other day there was like, who should Rodrigo de Paul leave Udinese for? And I'm like, why don't we flip the script? Who should Udinese sign to play around Rodrigo de Paul? Like, why doesn't that question be asked? But I mean,
Because they ain't got no.
I mean, aren't they like linked with the Granada and what's it called, Watford? But yeah, I don't know if that part.
I mean, look, very, very quickly. Super League, bad idea. But it's a reaction to the current state of affairs. Unless that changes, that's going to keep popping up. The only way it's going to be successful is if, similar to what's happening in the Premier League, the amount of money is based on position and TV like viewerships and what actually is picked up, which is a bit more fair. Then you cascade down that or a portion of that money into the lower leagues to support them. Similarly, do it for everybody. It's ridiculous how Barcelona and Real Madrid get like what, 60% of the revenue, or a ridiculous
More.
more than 60%.
Probably.
And
Well,
then you
actually no, not in recent years, but previously yes.
But that needs to happen. Like that kind of like do it based on standings. Do it based on like TV revenue, which is a bit more fair. Cascade the money down to the lower leagues. Support the grassroots. So even these clubs, can start coming up. If one of the big teams fails and goes down, at least they have a parachute. They have a support structure for them to go back up.
Yeah.
The current state of affairs needs to change. UEFA and FIFA are in it for profit. They need to be for the sport, which they aren't.
To wrap it up, I think the same I could say is that unfortunately it's become more of a business than it has about developing football and for the fans, for the upcoming players, upcoming teams. It's a sad thing to say. It's the reality, unfortunately. And whether the Super League is actually going to be something that completely derails that or not, who knows? But it is an interesting topic, and it's getting quite a bit of traction. So I think we can sit and discuss it for for hours, but unfortunately we don't have much time. But I think it was a nice input from both of you. So thanks for that, and thanks to everyone who also sent in their ideas. Abed Zaidan for giving us that very interesting snippet on the state of affairs, of how a fan feels right now. And maybe we can pick it up another time, but unfortunately that's all the time we have for today. So thanks a lot, guys, for coming by. We're going to have another episode coming up very soon. Please keep checking us out, keep clicking that subscribe button, and we'll be seeing you all very soon. Thanks for listening in. Bye-bye.
Happy 10th episode. Thank you.
Happy 10th
take a
episode.
chill pill.
Yeah, take a chill pill, bro.
We promise Yahya will be in more zenned out mode in the next episode.
I hope so.
All right, cheers, guys. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.